Finish Line, a podcast on the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network, where every 2 weeks I will be chatting with ordinary people doing extraordinary things on their path to their own finish line.
Hey, what's up, everybody? And welcome to episode 6 of Beyond the Finish Line. That sounds crazy to say. Time flies when you're having fun. Today we have my friend, Aum Gandhi. Aum is an ultra runner, co-owner of Run Try Bike. He co-hosts the Fireside Chats, Fiery Embers, and he also co-hosts with me on our new podcast, What's in Your Earbuds, on the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network. Today we get to sit down with and chat with Aum about his introduction to ultra distances, his path to 200 milers. Aum just completed the Tahoe 200, and I'd like to unpack that journey. And also, feel free to chime in with any comments or questions during the chat. And me and Aum will get to those throughout the pod. Also, if you feel so inclined, you're digging the pod, please subscribe, rate, or review the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network, wherever you get your podcasts. The Everyday Athlete Podcast Network is building a great, fantastic community with even better hosts of podcasts, and we're growing. And without further ado, let's bring Aum on and have this great chat with him.
Hey, what's up, Joe?
What's up, Aum?
It's
How's it going?
on the other side of all this.
Yeah, it's weird. It's cool. Yeah, so first of all, I'm stoked and honored. Ever since I got this opportunity, I wanted to have you on. And you're busy. There's been a lot of things going on, man. So I say let's just get in the nitty gritty of it and give introduce yourself. Tell us who you are.
Yeah, totally. Aum Gandhi is a Merrill professional trail athlete. Aum Gandhi is one of the co-owners of Run Try Bike. At the core of it all, I like to go out and have adventures. I like to run all around the world and do extreme stage races. I love running long distances, 100 miles, a bunch of 200 milers. Did a 300 miler at Across the Years back in January, and I just love getting out there, having fun, eating good food, and meeting good people, and being part of this community. And just love representing who I represent in this community as a South Asian, and also just love repping the people who have gone from fat to fit, and trying to talk more about my mental health and sobriety story as well. So I think at the core of it, that's who I am.
Yeah, man, I love how transparent you are with all that, because obviously I went through a similar journey. So it's always nice to, like, when you share that, and it gives me something to resonate with and something to relate to. And I know that it's not just me; it's a lot of people. So yeah, man, thanks for sharing all that. So tell us about your introduction to running.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a good place to start is I don't come from an athletic background. I was 250 pounds when I was 18 years old. I was pre-diabetic. Back, if you go back to my childhood days, I failed every physical fitness test in school. I was the last kid on the track. This is just not something that I did. And then, flash forward to when I'm 25 years old, I was working a pretty high stress engineering job. And I was just looking for a mental outlet, something of my own, something to get me away from the engineering space, from some of the financial relationship life struggles. And running just seemed like the easiest thing to do, to just put on a pair of shoes, to just put on, workout clothes. And one night I went outside and just decided to run a quarter of a mile because that was all I could pull out. And it was the most nauseating experience of my life. I felt pretty sick. This was back when I was 25, still drinking, still, totally different person than I am now. But something sparked in me in that moment. And maybe I didn't fully realize it back then, but something kept bringing me back. And I just set the goal of running for 30 minutes straight, running my first 5K, a half marathon. And that's sort of what started my running journey. And then the pandemic sort of happened, and I dove headfirst into the world of trail running and ultras.
Nice, nice. Uh, so do you remember like the moment when you first trail run? You're like, oh, this is it. Like this is what I want to do. Like, do you remember that moment actually happening for you?
Um, yeah, actually, I sort of do. So it was kind of a two-part process. And I didn't grow up like going too much out in the outdoors. I grew up in a very like city, concrete jungle type environment, and then spend a lot of my time in the suburbs after that. And never really got outdoors. It wasn't really a thing in my family or where I grew up. And then um, made some trips out to some national parks. But I think 2019 was the year when I signed up for a backpacking class and I started really getting out into the wilderness and being out in the mountains and climbing peaks. And uh, that sort of paralleled with my path in running. And then, as you know, like COVID closed everything down. I was training, I'd done 5 half marathons up to that point, and I'd signed up for the Orange County like the Orange County full marathon, which seemed like the scariest thing in the world at the time. And of course, that got canceled, and I had no idea what I was doing. And so I just decided the whole world's kind of falling apart. Was going through my own struggles again, like I think we all were. And I just decided to, uh, you would think I would commit to a 50K first, but July came around and I signed up for a 100 miler. I had been thinking about it since I'd first seen the 100 in 2018 when I was starting to get into running, but I was like, this is crazy. This 50 mile or 100 mile stuff is for Olympians and like gods and like incredible human beings. This is not for me. And then I think I must have stumbled on during COVID one of Wes Plate's videos. It was definitely Wes's. I think it was a Zion video, and that was one of the things that sparked me wanting to do the Zion 100 as my first race in April of 2021. And I think I'm just one of those guys who signs up for big things, and then I'm like, I'll just figure it out on the way there. And I can tell you that when I first signed up for that thing, I was sweating bullets, and it was very scary. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get there, but that's kind of what I think. Having that big goal, and then being out on the trails subsequently after that, and actually running the trails is what those were kind of like my aha, this is something I really love kind of moment. It just brought this like new thrill into my life.
Oh yeah. So do you feel like okay? So I'm obsessed with 100 milers too. Like what? I just signed up for my first one. I told you that already. But what do you think it is about the 100 mile distance that speaks to us? Because like I don't know, I just can't get the number in my head, and maybe you can give me some insight, give us some insight into what do you think speaks like. Why do you think the 100 mile distance speaks to trail runners? Some trail runners, I guess.
Well, I think that even though 200s are starting to explode and they're getting to a place where they're starting to transition from this is a new frontier to like every state has one now, and it's starting to become more like in the next 4 or 5 years we'll start to see 200s become mainstream. I still think that the 100 miler is the golden distance, and I think it'll always remain that way because there it's just I think it's the gateway between like, and it's not to say that any of the other ultras are like not hard challenges. Like a 50K is relatively hard for somebody, a 50 mile or 100K, and there's some hard races in that distance, like Barkley Fall Classic and all the crazy races in Europe and sky running. But I think that the 100 miler is truly the gateway into what we call like the long distance, where I feel like there's a certain energy, there's a difference in energy when you start to get into nightfall and when you start to get into like uh, into a position where you're past like the 50K 50 mile and the 100K mark, where there starts to be a transition from like person versus person to more of like everybody trying to like support each other and this like sense of camaraderie. And I think that calls out to a lot of people. And I think that there's a strong sense of community in those distances. And I think that the 100 is just it's it's just one of those like goals that I would say I think it's because a lot of our the most iconic races, the UTMB, Western States, Hard Rock, a lot of the classics are 100 mile distance. I think it's the distance that um, truly is the bridge between truly is the bridge between like what is to come versus like what we already have, and it's like the gateway.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, okay. That got me all fired up. Yeah, yeah, amazing. So I want to get into your 200 miler stuff, but also I want to talk to you about Run Try Bike too. Um, so give us all a background into how you got involved, how you became co-owner of Run Try Bike, and obviously big shout out to Run Try Bike. Tell us about that history, how that came to be. Yeah, tell us about Run Try Bike and this beautiful community that we're building together.
Well, I appreciate you calling it a beautiful community. And first off, I appreciate you being a part of it as well as both a writer. Joe has some great articles on our website, and he's continuing to write for us. He's also an amazing podcast host. I mean, Beyond the Finish Line is one of our most popular shows. I think our in our top three for sure. And just excited to have you be a part of this. And as far as like the story, I've heard Jason tell it like 67 times now or more, and I think I'm going to let Jason speak to his side of the story and how he founded the business tomorrow.
Yeah,
But from my perspective, when Jason launched the business publicly in January of 2021, I was one of the first people to comment, and I said something like, "Can't wait to see where this goes." And I had no idea who this guy was. He just popped up on my feed, and April of 2021, it was like a week before my first 100 miler. I wanted to take a chance on telling my story, kind of like you took a chance on telling your story. And I had these thoughts of like, well, what if nobody cares about my story? What if my story isn't really that cool? And I'm like, well, you know what? I just want to give it a shot. And so I submitted a how it all started to Jason, one of the first ones on the Run Try Bike platform, called It Started with a Quarter of a Mile. And and it changed everything. And I reached out to Jason a few months later as I was trying to get a writing business off the ground while still working for civil engineering. And I was one of the first people to start writing for the business as well. And I wrote an article. Fun fact is, I wrote an article called "How to Be the Importance of Positivity in Endurance Sports." And that article was what got me discovered by Merrill and made me a Merrill pro athlete. So a lot of what I've done is revolved around the business. But going back to Run Try Bike, March of 2022, as I was trying to find new ways to like build out a writing business and like expand into marketing, I told Jason like, I don't just write, I do social media. And Jason looked at me and he said, "Take it from me, I don't want it. I don't like this." Like it was too much work for one guy. And then so I took the social media off his hands. I started running the social media of Run Try Bike. I have ever since. And then June came around in 2022, and Jason and just realized that we shared so many ideals about like the everyday athlete and whose story should be told, and the valuation of like our stories. And he asked me to be a part of the business, and I was like, "Me? You want me to run a business?" Like I'd never in my life, like I just failed to start a writing business. I'd never in my life thought that I could be a business owner. And flash forward like 2 years now, and it's amazing where this thing has gone. And we're just so appreciative of all the love and support we've gotten. And I think, like you said, it's a beautiful community. I'm just proud of it and excited to see where everything goes.
yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing what happens when you just kind of say yes to something or kind of sign up for something scary. I took a chance, like you mentioned. I reached out to you, I think, and then same thing. I was just like, "What? No way!" Like, um, so that's awesome, man. Thank you for giving us that background. Uh, Glad to be a part of it too. Okay, so the big topic lately is Tahoe 200, which you just completed. Um, but I want to talk about 200 miles in general. So what? I guess I want to. I guess I want to know. You did like the usual progression. You did 100, 50 Ks, right, and then hundreds. You've done 50 milers. Like, when did you decide? Like, when did you put your finger on it? And you're like, I want to do this 200 miler. And which one was that too?
I when I submitted my story to Run Try Bike in April of 2021, there was another story that was submitted a week before to Jason. It was like the one I think right before mine, and it was about a guy named Hector Rodriguez who was doing the Triple Crown of 200s. And I was like, what is the Triple Crown of 200s? What is a 200 miler? So I started Googling it, and I think I saw uh, one of West Plate's videos again. I saw the Moab 240 video. I saw a Bigfoot 200 video by Kerry Ward that also got me like fascinated with the distance. And I'd spend so much time wrapping my head around like spending most of the year training for 100 that when I saw 200, it absolutely like blew my mind. I was like, there are people going farther than this. How far can we go? I kind of put it aside for a bit because I was like, at the time I was thinking I was going to be one and done with the 100 miler. Like it seemed like an impossible task to me, even with all the training I was doing. I'd done four 50Ks in training, and I'd also done like the Yeti Ultra 24-hour challenge and put down a lot of miles. But the 100 just seemed like this impossible feat to me. Um, and then Zion 100 came around. I struggled tooth and nail through that race. I got everything. I did almost a million things wrong in that race. I got trench foot. My feet were shredded. My nutrition was so bad. Like, I mean, I was so inexperienced. I had like Amazon socks, as opposed to like Invinjis. I didn't know what Invinjis were because I didn't have a lot of connections during COVID. And you couldn't get out
Yeah.
and talk to people and meet people, um, and so I came in. I finished the race. I came in as the DFL finisher with 2 minutes left to go, and that was like a whole crazy story. And there's like a finish line sprint of like an 11-minute pace that was the difference between finishing and not finishing the race. But after I finished that race and I crossed that finish line, I did have to go to urgent care, and I was fine. But my family was obviously worried and everything. But weirdly enough, going through that suffering for 36 hours made me realize like I do want to find out more about this 200 thing. And then Destination Trails tempted me in June of 2021. It was the first year that they released the registration for the entire Triple Crown. And it had always gone big, as you know, like going from 16 miles to registering for a 100 miler before I'd even done a 50K. So I was like, well, okay, I just did a 100 miler. I wonder what will happen if I register for the Triple Crown. And there's like a 2-year deferral policy. So I was like, okay, worst case, like I'll just defer it back. And it's deferred to this year. But yeah, I just went for it. And then I messaged Hector and I said, like, do you need any pacers or support crew for the Triple Crown? And I thought he was going to say no. And he asked me to support him and pace him for Bigfoot 200 and Moab 240. And I started really deep diving into this world. And Bigfoot 200 opened up, pacing and crewing that race opened up all the doors for me. That was actually the first time I met Wes Plate in person, too. It was like being awestruck at an aid station by a celebrity. I was like, oh my God, you're Wes Plate, man. But the summary of it.
That's cool. I recently had a chance to chat with West Plate recently, and I was having some internet problems. I think I've already told the story, but I kind of want to share it. So things didn't work out, and I didn't get to be on his pod at the time. Hopefully, I will in the future. But I've got like a funny story about how I spent an hour on the phone with West Plate troubleshooting my Wi-Fi for me. That's cool. Yeah. I'm gonna have to tell him about that. But I just thought that was like the weirdest thing. It's like, man, this is West Plate. Like he's helping me with my IT problems. But I think I get to chat with him later on this week. So yeah, I love his stuff, and I think that's what's got me between you and Casey Sanders and him and Jennifer Goins on becoming ultra. I'm like really fired up about 200 miles. I know I haven't done my 100 miler yet, but this has all got me really fired up. And I don't know. Right now, it's just stoking a fire, and I think maybe I have a little bit of curiosity about this. So I want to So your introduction 200s was the Bigfoot 200, and then right, and then you went from that to Tahoe, right? Which is
So what happened is at this point I was registered for the Triple Crown, and now it was about like
okay.
how I was going to get there. So I knew the next step I had to take um, was get another 100 miler under my belt. I wasn't sure which one. I did a 24-hour race after Zion in 2021 and didn't really go that well, but obviously it was like 6 weeks after a 100 miler, so I kind of like was already wrecked.
Ooh,
And then I paced 50 miles at Bigfoot 200. I crewed, and then I paced
okay.
50 miles at Moab, and then 41 miles. 24. It was actually 91 miles total. I paced at Moab, so that sparked something in me again, where I was like, "There's sort of a pathway here." I was on my feet for a long time. I've now seen a 200 miler at two different races from Destination Trails, and the Moab really called out to me. And I was also like, uh, I was also young and reckless, and I did 91 miles there, so I thought like I don't want to let this go to waste. And we were all kind
Yeah.
of riding the race high of like Hector finishing the Triple Crown, and me and two other friends registered on the spot there for a race called Valley of Fire, which is like a flat-ish race in Nevada, which is like a 15-mile loop, like sort of a loop like Javelina, and you have 35 hours to do it. So, and it was like 12,000 feet of game, so pretty reasonable. I thought another chance here to do a 100 miler, and at that time, I also signed up for the Across the Years 72-hour race
Yeah.
because I wanted to see how I would handle multi-day setting. Because like I'd done a 100 miler and I had gone through the night at Moab and Bigfoot pacing, but I figured the biggest gap between the 100 and the 200 was how I would handle multiple nights. And so I ended up doing Across the Years in December of 2021. Ended up getting third overall male. Ended up doing about 170 miles, and we raised $2,500 for a Ridgestone family through it. And I
Yeah.
still solicit money for them and raise awareness for them to this day. And that was what gave me the courage to put my name in the Moab 240 lottery, because I figured like, hey, if I get in, I do it, and I see how far I can go. And if I don't get in, I still have the Triple Crown anyways. So I got in to the Moab 240 in 2022 and did a bunch of races. I would say 2022 was a tough year and it changed a lot of things. Four of my six big races were DNFs, including the Moab 240. But we could definitely dive into that if you want to talk about
Yeah.
that more.
Yeah, I do. I especially want to know, like, how do you bounce back from those? Like, what did you learn from these DNFs too?
2022 was a year that changed my trajectory as an athlete and a runner forever, because I think that common thing, and I can't speak for anyone in people who come from addiction, you know, uh, just to preface, I am like on my third year of sobriety now. I've also struggled with eating disorders, like ate too much growing up, didn't eat enough when I started losing weight, and food was like my first addiction, and then alcohol became my next addiction, and then once I became sober, there was like I kind of put almost all of my identity on like not just being like different things, like instead of having multi-facets, I became Om the Ultra Runner, and that was all I was, even though I had other things going on, because that was the thing that helped me sort of start to discover my true self. It became my new addiction, and I think that in 2022 I took on more than I could chew, and just a lot of things were happening as far as like leaving my engineering career, being a business owner, becoming sober. That first year of sobriety is so tough. Like I was trying to rediscover who I am. All these demons were coming out of me like Pandora's box, because like I couldn't hide behind alcohol anymore, and I was trying to hide behind Ultra, but you really can't the same way.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
Moab 240 came, and I DNF'd at the 1 yard line at mile 235 because I suffered a hip injury at mile 220, and I think that even though I had that physical injury, there was a lot going on mentally. And I think that I needed that DNF at that big race for me to like start rediscovering myself and not hinge my identity entirely on ultra running.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. First of all, let me say congratulations on 3 years.
Thank you.
Also sober individual, ultra runner, sober ultra runner, I guess. But not to hang my whole identity on that, like as you said. But what do you think it is about? I think we did touch on this a little bit in like the green room, but what do you think it is about like recovering addicts or people who've been through like deep struggles? What do you think it is about ultras that kind of speak to us? Like, what do you think it is that makes us tick, and how that kind of relates to ultras?
I think it's chasing the high for sure. I think that it's a different kind of high. I know that people, and I'm sure you hear it all the time. We always hear that, oh, you just traded one addiction for another, but I don't think that's entirely true. Like, I do think that yes, it is an addiction, and it can become a problem if you let it spiral out of control or rage like a wildfire. But I always believe that it's a difference between instant gratification, which is like alcohol and like other vices, versus delayed gratification, where you really have to work for this. You have to train for this. You don't just walk up and you get your buckle or your medal. You have to like go out there. You have to go from aid station to aid station. You have to go the distance to do it. And so the high you get from those, from that suffering and from like achieving that goal is such a different and more fulfilling high than I've ever gotten from like any sort of other addiction. Um, and even not, and not even just like the process of finishing it, right? Like the high of like discovering yourself out there in the ultra. You've felt it at Momofo 100K, but like
Yeah,
when you hit up against the wall over and over, and then you break and shatter that limit, and then you realize like you're capable of so much more. There's no high like that. There's no light that I've ever discovered like that, and I think that that keeps bringing us back. And it's helped a lot of us who are kind of in that island of misfit toys who don't really didn't really have a place of belonging find like a sense of community. And you look around and like there's you, me, and Jason, and there's so many other people who come from addiction. You look around and you like see this community of like people, and you look and make eye contact with them and realize they've been through similar things in a different way and have their own story in this. And we just kind of built like our own tribe here.
yeah, yeah. I love that. I realized that a while back. I became more open about sharing even my story, my struggles with addiction and mental health issues. And then when I realized that, I was like, wait, I'm not really unique here. And I'm just like, wow, like I think I found a family here. So yeah, what you said really rings true with me. Uh, yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Beautiful. Is there a way we could kind of backpedal and talk about Richstone Kids too? Can you give me a little bit of info about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Richstone is a big part of what I do. When I went to college, I discovered Richstone through my engineering program. Actually, we did some work with the kids there at Richstone. Uh, they're gonna kick me out before the show's over.
Okay.
I'm just I'm just joking, but yeah, what I was gonna say is, yes, I discovered Richstone in 2016. We did some projects with the kids over there. To summarize, Richstone, they're a organization in deep in Hawthorne, California, in West LA, area that has drug addiction and gang violence. And to summarize, it's not a great place for kids to grow up. There's a lot of like poverty there as well, and the whole goal of Redstone is to prevent and treat child abuse and domestic violence and generational trauma. And I just really love the work that they did. And when I did my 72-hour race it across the years, I'd always, just to backtrack, I'd always run for charity with my big events because I always felt like it gives me another purpose and more strength, but it also allows me to take this crazy thing. And I think that I don't want to describe it as like people watching a train wreck or watching like a guy on the unicycle on the trapeze, like a tightrope or whatever. But I think when people see something unique or wild like that, like it raises awareness. So I used these races to raise awareness because people look at this and they go, "Wow, this is crazy," and "Whoa, this is a good cause,"
Yeah.
and so I just kept doing work with Bristone, raising awareness for them, and we raised almost $14,000 through all my races between December of 2021 to now, and
Oh,
just
wow.
more importantly, raised awareness of the fact that there are organizations out there like that who help kids in low income bracket families, who have minority families, and who help these kids realize that you don't have to be trapped in this box, that you can do all these. It doesn't have to be ultra. It can be something else. It could be like one of the kids said that they wanted to be a pilot, and it could be being a pilot, but their environment doesn't necessarily reflect that. So I wanted to show them through example that through my races that you can do hard things. And last October they made a banner for me with all the handprints of the current kids at Ridgestone on it. And I made it my goal for every race since then to carry that banner in a sprint across every finish line. And I've done it so far. So far, so good. And sometimes that's been the only thing that's kept me going during these races when the tank runs empty for the intrinsic motivators. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate the work that I do for them and appreciate that uh, they've given me this honor.
Oh, I love that so much, Owen. Um, um, so while I got here, we need to talk about Tahoe now. Um, let's let's get into Tahoe. How'd that go for you? Give us the nitty gritty, and then I had a little word come up that I want to talk to you about, and that's Stegosaurus. Tell us what that means too.
Okay,
As
so
soon as I saw that, I was like, what? Okay.
to summarize the Tahoe 200, it is the first race of the Destination Trails Triple Crown, the first of three that I'm doing this year. And the Tahoe 200 is a race that starts at almost 7,000 feet and goes all the way up to 10,000 feet. So it's a high altitude race. It gains about 35,000 to 38,000 feet, depending on whose watch you ask. It also the same, so it's like 75,000 feet of elevation. I logged 208 miles there. Somebody's watch logged 219, but I think it was anywhere between 207 to 219. And yeah, it was a wild experience. I hit my goal. I wanted to finish 200 miles in 85 hours. So as far as I'm concerned, I did 208 in 86 hours. um,
Oh,
I had bonus miles, so I, I made it my goal that I wanted to finish on Monday night, not have to go through more than 3 nights. I think that would have been my fourth night, and I successfully did it. And uh, yeah, it was just a wild experience. And I was fortunate to have a great team with Jason being crew captain, my girlfriend
yeah.
Brianna also being a great co-captain, and like pacing me for almost 34 miles out there, and then Jason paced me for 50 miles. And I had an experienced group of like people on part of my crew, and I've never had a crew that big. I've never been able to like go there and have somebody just say, "Don't think about anything else. Let me pull off your shoes. Like, go sleep in the truck." Like that was such an privilege for me to have that, and it was just such a fun experience because I was able to like not only have my adventure but like share it with the people that I care about, and I think that made it so much more fun. And shout out to Casey Sanders. We spent the first night together, and shout out to Andrew Marvin too. Uh, Andrew didn't finish the race, but he's one of the grittiest people I know. He went for about 170 miles out there, and before he had to tap out due to lung issues. And Casey just kept going on and on, man. Dude was relentless. I saw him again on a mountain back, and I was happy that we both got it done. And I got besides the Stegosaurus story, I've got to tell you about the vomit story as well. But
Yeah. Go ahead, Owen.
Okay, so it's the first night of this race is the toughest. It's the tightest in cutoffs. It's you have to so you do multiple out and back. So this one is from mile 0 to 31 and back is the first out and back. You go back to the start line at mile 62 or 65, depending on whose watch you ask. Uh, and then you do mile 65 to like 130 in Tahoe City, and then you come back to the start line again for the other out and back. And so the first night is like the toughest climb. It is the highest point of the race. This thing called Armstrong Pass at 11,000. So I'm like 15 miles into this race. We're on a single track conga line. It starts to open up. First section is like 16 miles and 4,000 feet of gain. Ton of climbing. Um, and like I'm already starting to get a headache from the altitude and like the dry heat and everything. It was the hottest day. I get to the aid station at mile 15, and obviously I make the greatest decision of my life to have a veggie wrap with brown guacamole that's been sitting out in the sun because I real food. I ate it. I was already not feeling good. Took down a protein shake, Orgain protein shake, plant based for the
Oh yeah.
protein. Um, Part of my nutrition plan. So far, I feel like I'm on plan, and I'm not feeling good. And me and Casey were together at this point. And I just kind of stumble out, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to stop at some point. And I know Casey's gonna catch up to me, so I'm just gonna keep walking. So I get to mile 17. I see like a big rock, and I'm like, I don't know if I have to like, I don't know if it's coming out from here or if I'm gonna have to take a shit. Right. So like, I get to the rock, and I'm just like sitting. I go behind the rock, and I just start like, it comes out slowly, but then I just start puking so hard. That's one part of the story. But the funniest part of it is like I finish puking, but I'm like still in excitement mode. I'm like, oh yeah, this is the pain cave. So all Casey can hear as he's walking up is yeah, yeah, yeah. And like I come out from behind the rock. And all Casey sees is my mouth with puke, and I'm like, hey, like a toddler. And so now later, we're during this race, we catch up to Andrew at like mile 30 or whatever, and we all leave the aid station at Housewife Hill together at mile 31, going to mile 47. So now we're on the back. But this section is the most climb in any section in the entire race. It's like 15 miles and like 4,500 feet of gain. And it's starting to get dark, and it's like night, and we just don't stop climbing, right? And me and Casey are jealous because like we ate like I drank a Coke, I had like some food, but Andrew put down like 3 burgers while he was there, and I was like, how do you? Come on, right? And then so we're all climbing, but none of us wants to be the one to say, all right, we need a break because we're tired. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. We need a break, and they're both like, okay. So we we sit down at the rock. Casey's already feeling nauseous at this point. We don't know how Andrew's feeling. We all sit down like on this rock, like lean up against it together, and we're all sit down. Andrew's with me on the left, Casey's on the right. As soon as Andrew sits down, he goes, "Oh no!" And he just like puking, and he he puked all over his poles and his like his shoe. But I didn't know this till later. But after the race, he told me that he felt bad because he thought he puked on my shoes. But me and Casey were just sitting there, and I look at Casey and I'm like, oh, and I look at Casey and he's looking sick too. And so we got to the next aid station. I had to leave them behind. They told me to keep going because I was doing good, and they both like napped there a bit longer. And but that just no matter how many times I tell that story, it just gets funnier and funnier. And me and Andrew just love it.
It's amazing how comfortable you can get with someone puking and running behind you. I learned that just recently. Just
It
like,
just cracks me up because it's like you sit down and like 5 seconds later you go from 0 to 100 and start puking and like we're but yeah, I mean, to summarize, that first day was the worst of all the days. Like, I've never felt so bad on day one. Like, it was so bad. I had a headache. I felt nauseous. I had to like take a nap and like really get my electrolytes back in to like start feeling good again. But yeah, after that, the vegan burrito saved me.
oh, yes, it sounds like you it sounds like it got better as you went. I heard you talk a little bit about like day three magic or whatever. Is uh is that kind of what you experienced at Tahoe then? Like a day three like resurgence of energy?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think the start of day three, of course, like I was fortunate to, my girlfriend was with me on the start of day three, and I just started like at a really runnable section. So I started just hammering away at the miles and started like feeling pretty good and started moving. And I definitely had a resurgence where I was like, let's jog, let's jog. And
Yeah.
the wild thing was I had like a day four resurgence, and that was because of Jason. Jason really pushed me at the end, especially like the last section. He was like, he asked me to leave it out there. He knew I had a goal. My timer was showing me at a 12:40 a.m. finish on the tracker, and then it went down to like um, 11:10 in like the span of like 5 miles because I just started like moving faster and like my I saw my crew's WhatsApp message. They're like, he's getting faster. Who does that? And like
Yeah.
it just kept going. But like yeah, I felt like I got stronger with every single day, and that was just an incredible feeling.
I could see Jason being like the best pacer, like best hype person in a moment like that too. So I could understand how you could get faster. I had like a good FOMO watching you guys on like Instagram and Facebook and everything. It's like, man, this is so cool. Like it was really cool. Kind of having my vantage point watching it all go down, man. It really got me fired up and got me motivated too to push further. So, uh, tell us about the Stegosaurus. I got to hear about this.
So it's the start of day two. I got to Heavenly, the start line aid station. I set my sleep plan was sleep for an hour at Heavenly, just reset now that the sun is out, and leave at around 9 a.m. on the start of day two. And then when I got to the next aid station, like the first aid station at night at Village Green, the next two would be 90 minutes to get REM sleep. But I took an hour, and turns out day two was pretty dang hot to start out too, and there's like an 18-mile section going to like Spooner Lake, and I was on the struggle bus a bit. I took like a small nap, but it didn't seem to do anything, and I just kept moving and moving as best as I could. There's a bit of climbing, and you have to cross like this road on the section, and there's like a crossing sign, like the diagonal crossing sign. I look back at it and I see like a yellow stegosaurus, like the size of like a large dog, just like walking across the trail. And I'm like, oh, like I know you're not real, but that's pretty cool. And I text my group when I got reception, I'm like, I see a stegosaurus, or like I must have told them later. They were like, uh oh. So I like after that, I like slept for 15 minutes, woke up, and then hit like a runnable section and started feeling strong again. But it was really freaking funny, like to be able to see a dinosaur. And it happened a few times after that. Like I saw dinosaurs in the logs, I saw faces in the trees, and uh, even Jason started hallucinating at one point, and I think my girlfriend had a hallucination as well. But it was the Stegosaurus was the funniest thing, man. So,
Oh, that's the best. Oh man. Well, thank you so much for sharing this with all of us. And obviously, we have to. I can't get take it. Can't take up too much of your time tonight. But we'll have to do a part two, obviously, because you've got tons of rad goals in front of you. Man, I'm honored to kind of be where I am and get to watch you do all this stuff. And like I said, it's a huge inspiration to me. I know you inspire a lot of other people. I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the pod, man. And and thank you so much. And I just want to say thank you all for listening. And if you're digging the pod, like I said, please subscribe, rate, review, and let's keep building this great platform. There's tons of great podcasts on this network, and we're doing great things. And thank you so much, Om. And
yeah, thank you so much for
yeah,
having me.
and
It's definitely an honor.
yeah, thank you so much for being on. And I'll let you go, but man, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate you, brother. Can't wait to get back on the pod one day, and excited to
Yeah.
listen to your episode with Jason.
Yeah. Come back tomorrow night. I'm gonna have Jason on. This is gonna be great too. My cup is full this week. This is awesome. So,
That's
and
gonna
thank
be
you all
fun.
so much.